Hello everyone, this is David Blair, the Crosshairs Trader of the CrossHairsTrader.com. Today we're going to look at some weekly charts and several stocks that have been firing on our bigger charts this week, and discuss what could happen with those over the course of the next few weeks to months for those who trade longer term stocks and look for a bias on the bigger chart, which is basically what a weekly chart will provide us. Just to give you an idea of what you're looking at, I trade off of several different time frames, an intraday, a daily, and a weekly. And as I said, we're going to look mainly at the weekly charts today, and also take a look at the daily chart and how it is working in conjunction with our weekly charts. We've got several trades we're going to look at. So along with our time frames here, we have the radar screen here on the left, which simply lists for me the ones that have been firing on the weekly, daily, and intraday chart. Gives me a heads up on just stocks to anticipate for possible moves and for possible entry if several things line up the way I look for them to line up for a high probability trade. Those who are Crosshairs traders and members and participate in my weekly live webinars know that it's not just enough to have a crosshair fire, but there are several other things that we have to look for it to be a high probability trade, for us to believe that the risk is worth the reward. So let's start with IR. IR has fired a green LO1. That simply means there has been a long crosshair on the weekly chart. And here's our weekly chart. And again, that simply means we have a possible bias on this stock and its movement over the next few weeks to months. Personally, I do not trade off of a weekly chart. I look for it to give me a bias. So then I go to the daily chart and I see that IR has had a nice move up in the last couple of weeks. Of course, that's what's formed our crosshair on the weekly chart. So now I'm waiting on it to pull back and consolidate in this area, and once it consolidates, gains a little bit of energy and strength, I can see possibly that IR, Ingersoll Rand, could give us a nice breakout and a nice run over the next few weeks, but it's just not ready yet. They've already had earnings, so we do not have to worry about earnings anytime soon. Norfolk Southern Railroad stock, NSC, they've already had earnings, and you can see that I have an earnings plug in here in my radar screen that tells me when earnings are or how long it's been. If it's been in the last few days, they had earnings 5 days ago. But we do have a crosshair now that has fired on the weekly chart. We still have some resistance up here, and we can see that on the daily chart. But it looks like everything is consolidating, possibly backing up here for a nice breakout and a run after the breakout for the next few weeks. So we'll be watching that one on our daily and intraday chart. WLL has already had earnings 4 days ago, and we can see that there's a crosshair here on the weekly chart. Again, there's several weeks of resistance here. You can see that on the daily chart here. So we'll again need to see some consolidation here and then a break above those highs before it's considered a high probability trade. WIN again has already had earnings. Crosshair on the weekly again needs to break out. Not there yet. We're waiting on it to step back and set up. Now, last week in our video we talked about MED, that it needed to back up, have earnings, which it did. That's out of the way, and now we're waiting for it on the daily chart to back up and go up. Those who are smart about trading know that you do not get in at the end of the run. You get in when it's getting ready to run. So we're allowing this to back up to give us that run. SPG, again, crosshair on the weekly. However, we want it to back up, possibly break out here on the daily. Still hasn't done it yet. VNO, same thing, waiting on it. And for those that are new here, my moving averages from my bigger charts I have superimposed onto my smaller charts, and you can see that VNO is hitting resistance here from the weekly chart, which is the dotted line. They also have earnings in 2 days, so it's not anything I'm too excited about just yet. AXP is one that we talked about last week also. Crosshair on the weekly, there was a crosshair on the daily, but we said let's wait for it to back up a little bit and gain some strength for the next possible run after its earnings, which it had this past week. So let's wait and see what's going to happen with AXP. AMX, again a crosshair, and again the same thing that's been going on with all of the stocks we've looked at so far. Everything's hitting resistance, pulling back. We don't get excited over it when it fires a crosshair on the weekly. We wait for it to pull back, which it's doing, pulling back to all our moving averages, which we want it to do, so no surprise there. CNQ, JRCC are ones that have fired, but they have earnings coming up in a few days, so not too excited about it. SU, you can see the problem here, crosshair on the weekly. However, the daily is finding a lot of resistance, price resistance and moving average resistance, so that one is not necessarily one we're excited about. Okay. We also talked about CCI last week. CCI I would call our bonus. CCI has also fired a crosshair on our intraday chart along with the weekly. Here's the weekly that fired. The earnings for this company was this week, so we've gotten those out of the way. But then when we look at the 144 chart, our intraday chart, you can see that there was another crosshair that fired to go along with the weekly chart. However, we have resistance, so we're waiting on it to break out of this resistance, give us a possible trade up on CCI. So those are the stocks that I'm looking at from a weekly big chart perspective, waiting on some things to happen on the smaller charts to set up a very high probability trade. Until that happens, we have to patiently wait for the probability to line up for us. Again, if you've got any questions, want to join us, thecrosshairstrader.com. You can contact me at david@thecrosshairstrader.com. If you're interested in downloading my workspace into TradeStation with the indicators, I can give you the details on that. I also hold seminars and weekly live webinars for members. If you'd like a free look at one of these webinars, please again email me, let me know. I'll be glad to allow you to join us so you can see exactly what it is that the Crosshairs traders look for a high probability trade on intraday and daily charts. Thank you and have a good day.